Hi there, I'm Sipka. This is the Apatros review. Now in this episode, this is actually the last review for the 2021 season, and after this I'll do the Spectrum 12 and 2021 year review. But the thing is, it's 2022 now, because I was unable to get this written up in time for it. But anyway. Now, in this episode we take a look at this, The Last Man on Earth. This is actually the 2006 Siren Visual Entertainment release. Now I've got I've got every single Australian release of this film in my collection, even the Blu-ray. And this is going to be a film I'm going to return to from time to time over the years. Now this is an Italian film. It was theatrically released, but the thing is, it was actually, the Americans saw this film before the Italians did. In fact, it premiered in the USA on the 6th of May 1964, then in Canada on the 22nd of July 1964, and then finally in Italy on the 19th of August 1964. Now, the film was directed by Ubaldo B. Ragona and Sidney Salco. Ragona was credited on the Italian prints and Salco on the US prints. That's basically what the disc looks like. This is actually the original cover for this disc. But the thing is, Siren Visual did a pretty bad job with the back, as you can see. And it was written by Richard Matheson and William F. Leicester. But it was also, the script made its way to Italy, and Fiore M. Monetti and Ragona actually modified the script. Now it's based on the book I Am Legend, which Richard Matheson wrote, and the film stars Vincent Price, Franca Bertoia, Emma Danieli, and Giacomo Rossi Stewart. Now about the DVD, this is in 235 letterbox. It's like 235 4x3, and English stereo and no subtitles, and runs for about 86 minutes 46 seconds in PAL format, no supplement. And this was the second ever Australian DVD release of this film. This actually superseded the original MRA Silver Screens release from 2002, but itself superseded by the 2007 Showtime release. For the reasons outlined in my review, I actually consider the Siren Visual disc to be the least preferred disc in my collection of this film, even though technically it just narrowly beats the MRA disc. Now this original film adaptation of the legendary Richard Matheson novel I Am Legend, made on a cheap by the legendary Italians in 1964, was not a commercial success when it came out all the way back then, but it's gained a modest cult following amongst fans of the legendary Matheson, his equally legendary novel, and fans of the horror legend Vincent Price. The film was also the blueprint for legendary horror director George Romero to create his own legendary horror classic, the original fleshing zombie flick Night of the Living Dead. Now Romero once worked with Matheson on a project for Disney that never got anywhere, but they enjoyed hanging out with each other, and Romero confessed to Matheson that he ripped him off. Matheson accepted the apology by asking him a question: "Did you make any money off it?" Romero replied, "Not much, man." To which Matheson replied, "Serves you right, thief." By the way, the reason Romero didn't make much money off Night of the Living Dead is because of a legendary goof with the copyright notice in the film. They accidentally took the copyright notice off the film when they changed the title of the film from Night of the Flesh Eaters, resulting in the film mistakenly put in the public domain. They rectified that in 1991. Now, since I own all 4 different Australian DVD releases of Last Man on Earth, as well as the Blu-ray, expect me to revisit this as a perennial topic from time to time. So for this reason, I will limit my review of the film. I saved a serious film review for the review of my Alpha disc print to a cursory one, and I'll focus the energy of this review more into the technical aspects of the disc itself. Now, the original Australian DVD release from MRA Entertainment in 2002 was only the 3rd DVD I'd ever owned, and the very first horror film I owned on DVD, and not including the Blackjack VCD copy I had of Terminator 3, because it technically ain't the DVD, which I bought right after it came out. It cost me $10, so it was worth it, and which led to me embracing the horror genre fully, and even led to me discovering Night of the Living Dead through buying the MRA release of that film right after this one. Now, while not the best on the technical side of things, the MRA release is the only release of this film to actually have a decent supplement on it. Basically a homebrew film critical analysis of biographies written by a fan, unlike all the other Aussie discs. So it still has a reasonable, respectable place in my collection. The DVD being the subject of this particular review is the 2nd release of the film, issued by Siren Visual Entertainment in 2006, as you saw the cover. And while superior to the original MRA disc, in only the aspect ratio, was quickly outclassed by the Showtime release a year later, which now has no real advantage, unless you're a completist like me. But that's not to say that this disc is entirely worthless, since if you're a collector who wants a workhorse copy for everyday viewing, so as to preserve your favourite copies, then this will be decent enough if you can stand mediocre quality. Anyway, Last Man on Earth is about a plague of coronavirus, never referred to as such in the movie itself, but the fact that it is a virus that came from bats, as real COVID-19 virus was engineered from, makes the connection obvious to post-2019 viewers, that turns the dead into zombie-like vampires, or zompies, as I call them, and has overtaken the world since nobody at the time could make a suitable vaccine or cure. How a 1964 Italian El Cheapo horror manages to be almost right on the ball with this in terms of predicting an actual pandemic is really quite astounding. This is effectively the original coronavirus pandemic horror movie. The only survivor is Dr. Robert Morgan, a scientist who survived because he was bitten by an infected bat right before the pandemic started, and therefore gained natural immunity. The year is now 1968, 3 years after the pandemic started, and Morgan spends his nights sheltering in his run-down by heavily fortified bachelor's pad with home movies of his dead family and hot jazz and old hi-fi to entertain him, while the zombies uselessly bang on the boarded-up windows with 2x4s, and next day sharpening his wooden stakes and heading out to hunt down every zombie he can find and take them out with extreme prejudice. Although even then he still doesn't enjoy his task. As a zombie at stake, it's probably the most detached zombie killing I've seen in the movie so far. Imagine if Mila Jovovich spent her time in the Resident Evil movies killing zombies, but looking like she was disgusted with actions instead of enjoying it. Yeah, strange thing to see, but it adds to the psychological character of the film. One day he discovers through contact with an adorable zombie dog that looks a bit like my family dog Gino, and supposedly human zombie woman named Ruth, that a group of zombies have managed to create an antidote of sorts, and are now a new type of creature. Not human, but not full zombie, just a form of hybrid that is safe enough to colonize the devastated world. But the only problem is that they see Morgan as the enemy, a monster that they consider their version of the boogeyman, and they need to destroy him to save the people from harm. Now, the script for the film was originally written for a late 1950s production. It was going to be made by Hammer Films entitled The Night Creatures, and written by Matheson himself. But it was nixed after the BBFC warned Hammer if they made the film would be banned. Fucking BBFC. So the script found its way to Italy, where it was made on the cheap, and Richard Matheson was so disappointed with the result. The film, for all its strengths, does suffer some sloppy editing and lackluster monsters in the slow as molasses zombies that can be kept back by simply giving them a good shove. It wasn't until the date in the film, 1968, that Romero managed to make a slow-under monster scary, that Matheson had his name removed from the script and replaced with a pseudonym. But despite that, this is still to this day the best official adaptation of the book. Night of the Living Dead doesn't technically count, although if it were official, it would beat even this one hands down. And it's a hidden gem 1960s continental horror. Definitely worth watching, and even proves to be the best film made by the coronavirus pandemic. A good 50-60 years before the pandemic even hit the world. Now, as for the review DVD itself, this is released by Siren Visual Entertainment, which is one of the leading Australian indie DVD labels, specializing in public domain material in the cowboy days of the late 1990s and early 2000s. Around 2006 or so, they made an impact on the horror scene for being the first Aussie label to release certain Italian horror films over here uncut. Lucio Fulci's zombie classic City of the Living Dead and Beyond, and the Umberto Lenzi cannibal flick Cannibal Ferox, and later issued a port of the Grindhouse releasing the disc of Cannibal Holocaust, one of the most hardcore horror films ever made. After a brand redesign and issuing the classic Tetsuo films on DVD, Siren Visual disappeared from the scene around the early 2010s and hasn't been heard from again. For that time, Siren Visual was a true cult horror label and I admired their work. As for the issue of The Last Man on Earth, Siren Visual faltered a bit in the technical side of things. Even though they managed to get a reasonably clean uncut print of those modern Italian films I mentioned above, here they simply got a widescreen 235 print of the film, but shrunk it down to fit a 4x3 letterbox, and applied a DRNR filter to the print, which makes the resolution look pretty bad. Even the MRA print from 4 years before, while having worse problems with contrast and grain, at least was only slightly easier to discern than this one, as that DNR, which is digital noise reduction, completely compromised the integrity of the picture detail. So now it looks like a bad compression job rather than anything else. That being said, at least the film was in 235. Actually, this was the first disc to actually put the film in its proper aspect ratio. And it's uncut. The MRA print was taken from an American TV print issued by AIP, which removes the bit with the crying baby at the very end. And the English 224 kilobyte stereo sounds adequate enough for the budget. Another slight advantage of the MRA disc, as that one had a very bad soundtrack. And both discs share a weird quirk in that they have a solitary subtitle tray that is completely empty, no words in them at all. So if you press the subtitle button, it will show up that there is a subtitle track, but there's nothing on it. But whereas the MRA disc has decent homebrew supplementing that indicates some of the MRA took pride in respecting the audience, the Siren Visual disc has absolutely nothing in the supplemental side of things. This is also the only Australian DVD for this film that is region locked, which is region 4. Every other Aussie DVD release of this film is multi-zone, which makes things somewhat interesting as their subsequent releases were all multi-zone as well. They apparently dropped the region locking when they got to the modern Italians and horror classics. Good call on their move. If you do come across copies of this disc, make sure you get it for reasonably cheap, and only use it as a workhorse copy that you can watch regularly, so you can preserve the other better copies. The 2015 Cinema Cult disc, the 2007 Showtime disc, and even 2002 MRA disc, for as long as they last. Otherwise, give this one a miss unless you're a completist, in which case my workhorse copy advice still stands. So this is what the film looks like. I should mention about the cover. This is what the Siren visual cover is, and you can see they didn't exactly do a good job of the graphics in the back, especially the pictures. Okay, so that's it for my final review for the 2021 season. Last Man on Earth gets a B+. And I should point out that the aspect ratio, like I said, it was 4:3 letterbox, but it's actually 235. So they shrunk the 235 down to fit the 4:3 screen. This is what was done to DVDs back in the early days of the DVD era. A lot of them. MGM used to do it. Universal used to do it as well. It wasn't until like after the early 2000s when they started anamorphic widescreen for every disc. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed that. Now I do not do requests, but if you have any questions about DVDs or films, just hit me up in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer. Hope you guys are staying safe. Happy New Year, and take it easy. That's it.